working on a couple other projects for a couple days, so had a back seat for the Beetle Ute, but finally the day is here to put the quarter panels on. Yes, this is the part where it starts coming together and starts looking like a Beetle Ute. Kind of an exciting day for me. I'm excited. So I probably spent about a day sanding and bending a little bit and tweaking, and I got the fitment the best I can get it. It's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's all stuff that I can make up for in bodywork afterwards. So I'm gonna give it a thumbs up and go ahead and glue them on. I'm gonna use 3M panel bond, which is probably pretty amazing stuff. Gonna give everything a nice clean wipe down, get it real clean so this will adhere well. You can probably already tell I've scuffed every surface that's gonna get panel bond on both sides, both in the quarter panel and on the aluminum. I've scuffed it with a 60 grit disc, so there'll be good adhesion. So all I gotta do now is wipe it down, then we'll put some panel bond on it and rivet and bolt. The 3M panel bond is really good, is what's gonna hold it all together. And this is just a fiberglass body. This is the strength here in this aluminum. That's really the strength. The quarter panels is to make it look cool. That's really all it is. So without further ado, let's get to prepping and gluing.
After I filmed the intro, I decided that I should include some of the fiberglass trimming in this video. So here's some of the footage of trimming fiberglass. In this case, it's cutting the fuel filler door and then trimming it so that the stock fuel filler door assembly fits in well. Getting this hole cut and properly sized to fit the assembly, it will take more time than you realize. So don't be surprised if you're spending a lot of time sanding on it, opening the hole up a little bit, but getting that fuel filler door to sit flush, like I'm checking here the flush, that's really what's going to make it look good. So make sure you get it nice and flush. Here I'm marking the front of the rear quarter panel to trim off the excess as it comes out of the mold. There's a significant amount you need to trim off here, and you need to check it against your B-pillar to make sure you're not cutting too much. As always, trim a little bit and do it 2 or 3 times. Once I got it marked out, I take the quarter panel back off, set it down on my table, and actually do the trimming. There are a lot of different tools that you can use to do this trimming, but my 3 go-to tools are the angle grinder, the pneumatic sander, and my body saw. Once you get your trimming done, then you got to trial fit it again. Now in this video, I'm showing going through this process once, but in reality, you'll probably do this 10 or 15 times. So here I'm checking my fitment, and you got to check it against the door, and I'm checking the lineup and the gap. I need to go in a little more there yet. So I'm actually going to trim some out of the steel in the B-pillar, the sheet metal steel, not the B-pillar itself. So I mark it out, how much I need to take off, and then I've got to pop that quarter panel off again, and then I'm going to trim the steel. And here I'm just using the angle grinder a little bit, but then I'll come back and clean up those edges with the sander a little bit too. On my last fitment, then I'll feather out these tabs a little bit so they sit nice and flush on the B-pillar. So I'm checking my gap, and then I'll check the alignment all the way down the door from the top to the bottom. And here I'm finally happy with the fitment, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next. Here we're cutting out the hole for the window in the rear window surround. Remember that your hole needs to be sized big enough that the seal and the window fit in. So it's actually about a 1/4 inch bigger than the window all the way around. There's a lot of different tools you can use to do this, but I like to drill a hole and then use the body saw. At this point, I'm using the roll-lock disc to feather down the edges, clean up some burrs, kind of put a feathered edge on that top piece that fits in between the two layers of steel. Then when I'm done with that, I go ahead and prep the inside of it, because later on I'm going to glue some interior pieces on it. So I want to kind of prep this up for gluing. It's a whole lot easier while it's still out of the car. As always, every time you make an adjustment, then you need to go make another trial fit and make sure you're getting your alignment and everything is sitting where it's supposed to be. Now we're finally ready to bond the fiberglass panels on. Make sure you prep and clean everything well before you start putting panel bond on. On this top rail, I use the countersunk aluminum rivets that come with the kit. So I drill all the holes, then I'll come back and countersink them, and then pop the rivets. You can use a hand riveter, but after my third kit, I decided it was time to get the pneumatic riveter. This is the Harbor Freight cheapo $40 one, and it's been working pretty well for me. On any areas that won't be covered, in other words that will show, I use cabinet screws, and then after 12 or 15 hours back those cabinet screws out once the adhesive has had enough time to start curing. I use the same procedure on the rear window surround. No rivets involved here, this is all screws. So I put a pretty thick bead of panel bond down each side, and then set the rear window surround in, put a good bead across the top, then I shoot some in between the two pieces of metal across the roof, and butter it out a little bit, since as that fiberglass panel slides in between, it will scrape a lot off. So give it a little buttering will help spread it out, and not as much will scrape off. I use the same procedures here down the sides using the drill and cabinet screws. Now as you tighten these, be careful you're not throwing your alignment off. You'll notice I end up finishing the torque with a hand driver so that I can make that lineup match perfectly to the back edge of the door.
So that was another pretty big day. We got both quarter panels on and the rear window surround, and they're secured down and curing. So tomorrow it'll be tight. If I put the window on and some tail lights on, it'd be drivable now, and it would be comfortable. But I like to seal up all those edges yet before we get out in the rain or anything. The one thing we didn't get done today that I was hoping I'd get to was the roll pan. So we still got to get the roll pan on down across here. Now we did it all in one day, getting these quarter panels on and the rear window surround. But don't let that fool you. I spent a day and a half trimming and fitting, test fitting and trimming a little off, and then test fitting again, then pulling it off, denting the metal in a little bit. So it's not a one-day process putting all the fiberglass on. Literally just putting it on, yes, you can do it all in one day. But to get it right and get your seams nice and even, and some things you got to make a decision on. For example, on the last one, I actually tilted this back and made this a flush seam and filled it and sanded it smooth. I'm not going to on this one. I'm going to accept this step, and we're going to do the rubber seam on this one. So there's some decisions to be made, and some things to do, and it's a whole lot easier to have, for example, cutting the window. That was a whole lot easier while that rear window, while the window surround was out, and I even drilled for the third eye brake light up there. Next up will be getting that roll pan in, and that's much the same procedures as I was doing today. I like to wait until I get this edge trimmed out real nice and straight before I do that roll pan. That's almost the end of this stage. So now we'll get going on all the accessories, doing body work. That'll be the next big step. And honestly, that's what takes the most time. And it just depends how nice you want to make it. You know, you can shoot it full of goo and swipe it with your finger to make a nice round to it and call it good. Or you can spend hours with filler and sanding it perfect, getting all the pinholes out, 2K primer on it, wet sand it so it's really smooth, and it looks pretty sharp with all these curves, having it nice and smooth. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I can always use the support so that I can keep doing projects like this and bringing it to you on video.